Everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Imagine, just for a second, that the walls of the human mind completely dissolved. No more secrets, no more inner monologues. Today, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating clinical psychological evaluation. We're going to explore what actually happens to the human psyche when it gets hit with the ultimate cognitive overload. We'll be diagnosing the mental and societal fallout of a world where privacy literally vanishes, and we're forced to process the raw, completely unfiltered inner lives of every single person around us.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture tomorrow morning. Every human on Earth wakes up with a terrifying new symptom, the ability to hear everyone's thoughts. And I don't mean their spoken voices or little whispers. I mean their actual, raw, unedited thoughts. The first few minutes of day one, it would be an absolute barrage on the brain's sensory processing. Imagine a student walking into a room and instantly hearing critiques of their clothes, their walk, maybe their awkwardness. Confidence? Dismantled in 3 seconds flat. Or, say your parents hug you, but instead of just feeling that warmth, you hear their deep-seated fears of failing as a caregiver. It is complete, visceral chaos, as the brain receives a non-stop, unfiltered data dump from literally every mind in the room.
Now, you might initially think, wow, nobody can lie anymore, this is a real game changer. But from a psychological standpoint, radical truth isn't the cure here, it's actually the disease. The primary symptom of this universal telepathy is the dangerous destruction of what we call social softness. What is that? Well, it's the tiny lies, the polite kindnesses, and the mental filters that act as the structural integrity of our relationships. Without these cognitive shock absorbers, our interactions would instantly become emotionally violent. Society completely relies on a necessary delay between what we think and what we ultimately choose to express.
So, the crucial point is, humans do not actually want complete honesty. We think we do, sure, but our brains are simply not built to handle it. What we really crave is comforting honesty. You know, the human brain is a messy organ. It fires off thousands of random, uncoordinated, and temporary thoughts every single day. Some are profoundly kind, but others, they're stupid, angry, or just completely irrational. Imagine being mad and your brain screams, "I hate everyone." 10 minutes later, your baseline mood returns to normal. But if that temporary spike in emotion is broadcast to the world, the damage is already done. Complete honesty means drowning in everyone's mental mess.
Section 1. Case Study: The Transparent Classroom. To truly understand the devastating effects of absolute mental transparency, let's observe a hypothetical patient, a young student, to clinically observe how developing minds handle this constant exposure. Let's contrast their baseline stress levels. In a standard, silent environment, look, people absolutely still judge each other, but those judgments stay hidden. That hidden psychological buffer is absolutely critical. It gives our patient the room to fail, the room to be awkward, and the room to actually grow. But in a transparent environment, where every petty thought is broadcast live, education completely stops being about learning. The classroom dynamic morphs into an arena of pure psychological survival, where any little mistake is instantly met with a chorus of mental criticism.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact auditory noise our patient is up against. Imagine raising your hand confidently, and the literal second the words leave your mouth, you hear this raw, brutal feedback echoing from the minds around you. How many times would a developing teenager endure that before they just stop trying? The clinical result is swift and severe: extreme social withdrawal. Out of sheer self-preservation, participation drops to zero. Why on earth would you risk embarrassment when the entire room's immediate, unfiltered judgment is permanently loud and clear?
Moving right along to our next section, the collapse of social trust.
As our case study expands beyond the classroom into broader life spheres, like social media and close friendships, the symptoms of this collapse cascade super quickly. The psychological safety nets that allow us to bond with others just dissolve. First, the perfectly curated social media influencer vanishes, because fake personalities shatter the absolute moment you hear their internal begging for validation. But it gets darker. Online hate evolves from text on a screen to raw, auditory thoughts in your head. For teenagers who already struggle with overthinking, this means their brain never gets a single moment of peace. The mental exhaustion becomes so profound that the final symptom emerges. People stop going outside entirely. Extreme isolation becomes the only known cure for the noise.
This even corrupts our most intimate bonds, like romantic love, and it happens in stages. Step 1. Intrusive, fleeting thoughts, like a moment of boredom or a tiny ping of jealousy on a date, are heard out loud. Step 2. Humans completely fail to forgive these totally natural temporary negative feelings. We expect perfect thoughts from our partners, which, let's be honest, just don't exist. This leads us to step 3, which is probably the most tragic outcome. People become paralyzed, terrified of their own minds. Love becomes robotic and fearful because individuals are no longer safely allowed to process their natural doubts. We lose our internal emotional freedom entirely.
Next up, we're looking at the intrusive thought dilemma. Pulling back to an institutional scale, this presents a terrifying moral and legal puzzle for society at large. If authorities can hear everything, sure, crimes might plummet and lies are exposed. But it raises a huge question. Should people be punished for thoughts or only for their actions? Imagine having a terrible, violent thought for a single second, but your prefrontal cortex does its job and you never act on it. In a telepathic world, that momentary impulse could define you forever. The resulting paranoia would be staggering. Society would shift from evaluating tangible actions to judging the most unstable, involuntary impulses of the human brain.
Let's move on and see how this builds. Compounding this ethical dilemma, the human brain involuntarily produces what we can clinically term random darkness. These are your sudden spikes of anger, irrational fears, fleeting jealousy, and wildly embarrassing impulses. Having these thoughts doesn't make a person evil, it just makes them human. The critical takeaway here is that humans are defined by their choices, by the filter they apply to their thoughts, not the intrusive thoughts themselves. Taking away that distinction would literally strip humanity of its moral agency.
Which brings us to our final prognosis: radical empathy or total isolation.
We really need to slow down for a second and weigh the ultimate outcome of this raw mental exposure. Does stripping away all our psychological defenses ultimately destroy human society, or is there a chance it could actually heal it? Are we doomed to total isolation, or could this force us into a state of radical empathy? Well, here is the biggest psychological twist of this entire explainer. Everyone is insecure. After the initial shock, after the judgments and the isolation, a profound realization would wash over the surviving society. That internal war that you fight every single day, it is completely universal. The perfect image is just an illusion.
Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is how it completely shatters those psychological walls. Think about it. The bully projects an aggressive external mask, but their internal reality is just raw fear. The topper looks incredibly successful, but inside, they are crumbling under stress. The funny person seems endlessly happy, yet their mind broadcasts intense loneliness. If we could hear thoughts, we would finally realize that everyone is just pretending to be okay. And witnessing that hidden pain might just force humanity to stop hating each other, sparking a really profound communal empathy.
Ultimately, our clinical analysis leads us to a vital conclusion. The social softness of mental privacy isn't a flaw, it's a necessary feature. The silence between minds is one of the greatest gifts we have for maintaining long-term mental health and building true, chosen connections. We don't need to violate the inner sanctum of someone's mind to understand them. Instead of wishing we could hear every messy, random thought, we just need to extend compassion to the hidden battles we know everyone is fighting.
So, we've seen the chaos, the emotional violence, the loss of freedom, and the strange potential for empathy. I want to leave you with this final provocative question. Knowing everything we just explored about the fragile, beautiful, and sometimes messy nature of human psychology, if you could safely break the rules and hear just one person's thoughts for exactly 10 minutes, who would it be? Think about that for a bit and keep exploring the incredible, strange truths of the human mind. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.
Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Calling all psychology students for this one. Let me start you off with a quick question. Have you ever been randomly thinking about a friend and then, boom, your phone rings and it's them? Or, maybe you walked into a room and instantly, without a single word being spoken, you just knew exactly how a family member was feeling? Well, today we're taking a seriously fascinating journey. We're going to travel straight from the realm of magic and pop culture right into the heart of cognitive science to demystify what we're calling the invisible bridge.
All right, so here is our syllabus for today. We're going to systematically break down this whole pop culture myth into real, observable behaviors. We've got the Wi-Fi brain hypothesis, the problem with proof, everyday telepathy, myths, history and anime, the empathy overload, and finally, the psychology of connection. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Wi-Fi brain hypothesis. Time to unpack this famous pop culture myth. Is hearing real thoughts actually magic or just a beautiful dream?
To study this properly, we really need a baseline definition. Basically, telepathy is talking without talking. No phones, no sound. It's kind of like having Wi-Fi, but straight inside your brain. It's the ultimate sci-fi concept, right? And it's so relatable because we use wireless networks all day, every day. It's incredibly easy for us to just imagine our brains having this built-in router secretly transmitting invisible cognitive data to everybody around us.
But
That brings us to Section 2, the problem with proof, and exactly why guessing games tend to fail in a lab.
From a strictly scientific standpoint, here is the big complication. No scientist has ever been able to stand up and prove with 100% certainty that humans can send cognitive thoughts to each other like radio signals. Over the decades, they've run all these laboratory experiments, putting subjects in isolated rooms, having them close their eyes, and trying to mentally beam pictures to someone in another room. The results? Totally mixed. Sure, there are some accurate guesses, but there are also massive failures. Without statistical consistency, the scientific method just stalls out. Scientists look at this and suspect it's just confirmation bias. We remember the lucky hits and completely forget all the misses. Or simply that the human brain is just a highly evolved guessing machine.
So, let's pivot a bit. Section 3. Everyday telepathy and analogies. What if we reframe mind reading as a behavior? Think about this for a second to trigger that Socratic curiosity. When your absolute best friend is incredibly sad, do they always walk right up to you and explicitly announce, "I am sad"? No, of course not. But as an observant friend and as a future psychologist, you just know. So how exactly do you pick up on their emotional state without hearing a single word spoken?
This right here brilliantly illustrates everyday telepathy. Think about a dog giving you that look. You just instantly know if they want food or if they need to go outside, right? Or think about a mother who just intuitively understands exactly what her crying baby needs. See, this connection isn't about literally hearing clear, grammatically correct sentences echoing inside your head. It's actually about processing nonverbal cues, feeling needs, and understanding someone's state without any formal language at all.
Moving on to Section 4, Myths, History, and Anime. Let's look at how humans have historically attempted to explain this connection.
Long before cognitive science gave us the fancy vocabulary for all this, humans were trying to explain this deep sense of connection. In antiquity, Hindu mythology talked about sages using divine vision to connect across massive distances. Back in the ancient era, Buddhist monks described the mind as a perfectly still lake that could reflect the states of others. Jump to the 20th century, during the Cold War, and you literally had the US and Russian governments running top-secret mind-reading tests. And today, we see it all the time in modern anime, like Naruto or Dragon Ball, where characters have these intense mental chats. Across literally every era, humanity fundamentally craves the ability to perfectly understand one another.
But let's take a step back. Section 5, the empathy overload. Let's talk about the very real danger of hearing everything. Let's do a quick emotional thought experiment. Close your eyes for just a second. Imagine walking into your crowded classroom, but suddenly you can literally hear everyone's inner thoughts buzzing all around you. You look around. On the surface, your best friend is smiling at you. Your parents texted that they're fine, but in your mind, you hear the hidden, heavy truths they're holding back. Things like, "I feel invisible," or "We are so worried." People carry immense invisible burdens inside.
So I have to ask, could you actually handle that? Hearing every fear, every insecurity, every deeply guarded secret of the people around you? As psychology students, you know exactly how fragile the human psyche really is. Honestly, maybe nature is actively protecting us here. Maybe we don't have full sci-fi style mind reading because our brains and our hearts just aren't emotionally equipped to handle that massive, crushing cognitive load.
Which brings us to this profound realization. You really don't need full telepathy to understand someone deeply. You only need attention, empathy, and silence. The most powerful connection isn't about forcibly extracting or hearing hidden thoughts. It's simply about listening with your heart and genuinely showing up for someone. Which perfectly bridges us to Section 6, the psychology of connection. This is where science meets the spiritual. Let's directly map these mystical, unscientific words to observable psychological terms. This is absolutely crucial for you to grasp. When spiritual traditions talk about feeling someone's energy, well, in psychology, we're pointing to the firing of mirror neurons, those brain cells that light up both when we act and when we watch someone else act. When people mention a mystical connection, we're usually just observing advanced body language reading. And that vague intuition? That's exactly what we study as emotional intelligence. Movie-style telepathy is in reality just everyday, highly tuned emotional intelligence.
So, telepathy is not a superpower. It is a skill of deep awareness. As students of human behavior, you've got to look at this not as magic, but as a measurable, completely observable human capacity. And the wildest part is, we're probably only tapping into about 1% of this awareness skill in our highly distracted modern lives. Finally, let's look at the ultimate empathy experiment, a practical challenge for you to try out in the real world today.
I want to leave you with a quick 4-step behavioral challenge. Step 1. Put your phone away. Just completely remove the distractions. Step 2. Look into their eyes. Establish that visual baseline connection. Step 3. Feel their energy. Pay attention to those micro-expressions, their posture, maybe the tension in their voice. And Step 4. Listen fully. If you guide yourself through these exact steps, you're going to prove to yourself that telepathy was never actually about sending text messages with your brain. It's entirely about the incredibly powerful connection of true presence.
Let's wrap things up with this final provocative thought. The quietest minds hear the most. When you quiet down your own internal distractions and judgments, you instantly create the space to truly understand another person. Heart-to-heart connection? That is the real, observable telepathy that we study in psychology. So go out there, be truly present, and start listening to what people are saying without words. Catch you next time.